Hey guys, it's Easy Sinks here. Today I'll be dissecting this project, just explaining everything that you saw in the time lapse, and I'm going to be just showing you all the project files and everything. So, first thing we have here is the gun sync. Nothing special or amazing, it's just the gun sync itself. So, not much to see here except for the green screen clip, which I'll show right now. And yeah, I mean, this is it. It's just a green screen clip with the music added and the gunshots. So moving on from that, we have the background layers, which I've already opened over here. And we have the first background layer, the background itself. We have the rock right here, and then we have the building itself. So the reason why I didn't do these rocks is because it would take far too long to do, and I did not feel like going through the process of just individually masking every single rock because there are too many of them. But anyways, let's go on to the second background that I masked, and there's the background itself. Then there's the moon, and it looks like this. So I saved each layer separately except for the original images, which lead me to these files right here, and I'll get to them in a moment. Now here's the After Effects file. You may see that some files are missing. It's because I made a new updated version of the files and I've rendered them at a higher bitrate with the new presets, and I named them differently too, but I'll show you the project files of those files of the custom backgrounds in a few moments. So let's go to this background as an example. You can see that everything is in a separate layer. I also have CC Starburst, which if I disable it, let me go to full quality so you can see things with better detail. So as you can see in this layer, I have everything separated. I have the background, which just to show you the effects I've added curves, so the little classic S curve. I added a lumetri color, which just makes things pop out more, and I changed the temperature to like something warmer because of the original background color. So let's just go disable that, just so you see. Let me disable this too and that too. So you can see what it looks like. So if I add curves, it looks like this. It looks a bit darker, but then I add lumetri color. It makes things pop out a bit, like the brighter stuff, and the little reflection of light coming from the rock here. And if I add deep glow, it makes everything pop out, and it makes everything have this nice glow to it. Then if I add the moon over here, it has a bit of a different preset that I've created. The curves is the same, except for lumetri color, which I had to do things a bit different because it's a darker object and I wanted to make more of it stand out and not be completely dark, which if I disable this layer, you see it's different from the background, but it still looks nice. I also added deep glow too, and it stands out more and it looks separate from the background. I also noticed a thing that in the time lapse that I did is that I went ahead and I masked this rock because it looked like it wasn't loading properly in the game itself. So kind of sucks, not much I can do about it, and I think I forgot to mask this. I guess I lost the rock because if I disable it, it's not there either, so. And the last thing that I've added to this is CC Starburst to make the background a bit more dynamic. I also added a mask layer to prevent the effect from going over the rock right here so it doesn't look out of place. And if we move on to the other background, pretty much the same thing. I added CC Starburst, only limited it to specific areas, and I added feather to the mask so it looks nice. As you can see, this is all one mask instead of creating two, just to make things quicker and easier for myself. If I disable this, you're going to see the stars disappear. And I did the same thing that I did last time with the other background, except I'm kind of glad that I separated the layers because as you can see, the building looks bad. If I enable the building, it has a separate preset for lumetri color, and the rocks do as well. And the last thing I added to make things look dynamic is CC Starburst again. And for the first background that you see, I just simply went ahead and just added a white solid for CC Starburst. That's what it is. You can see right here. As you can see, it's hard to notice CC Starburst because it's very subtle. It's not meant to stand out or anything like that. I also added wave warp, but I only limited to this affected area by the mask. So this is pretty much what I did to make this background look dynamic and nice, and it looks okay. Now this layer is just the plexus layer. This layer above here is just the gun sync itself. I just only used the audio and just rendered the background to reduce rendering times when I render everything together. But the plexus layer, if I double click on this, you're gonna see it's just a lot of footage piled and just changed according to the beat of the song. So it's simple. This is stuff I've made some time ago, one of my free time, so I just deleted the project files, but I could recreate it if I wanted since I have the Plexus plugin right here. And it's very simple. All I used for this was a camera lens blur and an active camera to just turn around and create like this awesome effect. And I've added like deep glow and glow to it previously, and color correction, as well as a gradient ramp to create this. So as you can see here, I have all my Plexus stuff. I don't have the project files for these because these can be easily created. I mean, I made them 15 seconds long, and it's very simple. But over here, if I go here, I have the space background, which I believe I used a version with noise on it. And I have this background, the mirror variation background. Now, these are newer files because I rendered them at a higher bitrate, but if I open the mirror one, as you can see, there's a lot of adjustment layers and shape layers, and there's just like lines, and there's the background as well. So let me just go ahead and just disable everything but the background so you can see everything. So as you can see, the background is just a simple gradient ramp that's set to radial, and it looks pretty nice. Then I go ahead and just add lines. But if we go inside of this composition layer, or pre-composed layer, you can see that the lines have an adjustment layer, and it's just this. And if I go disable them one by one, you can see that's just a grid. And I also have an offset to make this loop. I just enable layers one by one. You can see everything, and you can see this. So if I go and close this, it looks like that because of the effect that I added, which is a glow. And then I just added from A and B colors, which are these two colors. So that's why it has this purplish glow instead of like it being white. If I were to make this original colors, it'd be like a white glow. Let me just go ahead and do that. And let's add the other layer, which is the shape layer. Now this I added as the final thing, but if we go into this shape layer, you can see that there's an auto traced shape layer, and I use Saber, which has a really nice glow to it and looks awesome. And now that we're back over here in the main comp, if I go enable the adjustment layers, you can see that I start using the mirror effect. Although I could have just put this in one layer, but I did not at the time, and I didn't really think of it because I thought it would affect how things reflected. Or it might, and I might be wrong. Who knows? I'll find out soon. But I just go ahead and I just keep doing this until this turns into this weird trippy thing. And around here, this is when I start adding VR chromatic variations. And I start adding parts where I like the chromatic variation, and I add a feather to smooth out the effect so it isn't cut off abruptly. So it affects only certain areas where I think it looks good. And I keep doing this until I reach over here, which is CC. Normally when I type CC, it just means color correction, and I add lumetri color, just do some minor adjustments, mess around with the curves right here. As you can see, if I go to curves, I messed around a little bit, did the kind of little of a subtle S-curve, but not really. Basic correction, I didn't do much here, but I think I did add vignette. No, I didn't. I just used the curves because I thought I was going to add more. And then if we go over here, it's just a custom, well, it's not a custom, but it's a third-party plugin, which is pretty nice, which makes things look nice at the top, at the center, and the bottom. It gives this like glitch, distorted effect. I don't know how to describe it, but you can see it for yourself, so really don't need to describe it. Then I added some VR glow. It's not that noticeable, but it has kind of like this reddish glow, which looks nice, adds some variety. I added some shake and optics compensation. After that, I added glitch. And if you scrub around through the timeline, you should see the glitch affecting the footage. Yeah, right here, just at the start, the glitch is very subtle, and it's not meant to be like extreme, but it looks good overall. Now let's go on to the other backgrounds that I used. Now here's this background. If I go disable everything but besides the first black solid that's down here, which is the only black solid, you can see that it's just a simple gradient ramp with two colors, which is like this really dark blue that I like and this black. Then we added a smoke composition. The reason why it's here, this was added later on, but it's for the mountains. This is a white solid. It's for the stars. And I added another one just to make the stars pop out a little bit more. The reason why I did it like this is because this leaves kind of like a trail behind the stars, and normally it does look like that in real life though. But anyways, yeah, I added a deep glow. After that, I added lumetri color, added random shooting stars, which if I go here to the composition layer, it's hard to notice with this, but these are just the shooting stars and they move pretty fast, but they're like out of frame before the footage ends, so it loops perfectly. and it doesn't look out of place. Now, keep in mind that some of these layers are reorganized. Some of them I added them, like, let's say this, the smoke composition. That's like a final thing I did. Everything that is in this order wasn't exactly made in this order that is here, if that makes any sense, but whatever. Then there's a shape layer, which should be this planet or moon, whatever you want to call it. And I went ahead and added a gradient wrap, drop, shadow, and glow just to create this like atmosphere effect, so it doesn't look out of place. Then I added this auto traced layer, which again I added saber, so it creates this like kind of like subtle line that's here. Then I added another shape layer, which is just a line, to be honest, which is this atmosphere for whatever planet or moon that you're standing in, if that makes any sense. I might have gotten that wrong, but then I just duplicate this layer a couple times with different settings just to create this subtle line. And I go ahead and just add an adjustment layer, which is Lumetri color. Then I go ahead and add Lumetri color again, but it's for a separate layer, which only affects the top, I believe, or the bottom. Yeah, it only affects the bottom a lot. So that's why there's that little mask layer when I click on that. Then if we enable this, you see this has Lumetri color. It makes everything a bit more darker. There's also VR glow, which creates kind of a different nice glow. And there's chromatic variations, which I just added a specific type, stereoscopic. That's what I've added, and there's noise just to finish things off and make everything look a bit smoother, like around here, around the... This is it for this background. Now I'm going to go over to the next one. Now, this is a background that I followed a tutorial to help me create the backgrounds, and also I learned a lot of stuff from this. Some things I may have copied, but in the end, I made this my own, and I changed a lot of the things. Especially with this like city background, which I made in Illustrator. In fact, I do have the original file with me. The mountains from the previous project is here in the city background, which is right here. So let me just open them in Illustrator to show you. So as you can see, it's just a simple background. Well, not really background, but it's just a simple city made of a bunch of shapes, and it's very simple. Nothing complicated. And over here to the mountain layer, as you can see, it's just a lot of triangles with different shades. And yeah, well, there's only technically two types of shades, but they're in different sizes and shapes. Okay, so if we leave everything but the background down here, which is the stars, you can see it's just, I believe, fractal noise. It's an offset to create a loop, and it's optics compensation to make things look a bit like trippy and nice. So if I go ahead and just disable everything, it's just black solid, fractal noise creates like this awesome background, which you wouldn't be able to like do with CC Starburst unless if you like find a way to properly do it. This is just easier because this just moves and it makes things look smoother, and it creates a loopable background. And then optics compensation, just to make things look more dynamic. Then there's an adjustment layer for this background, which is very chromatic variation, and another one as well to affect more background. And then there's a cyan solid just to give this some color and make things look nice. But there's also more VR chromatic variation on top of this to make things look better. And because this step of adding chromatic variation before the cyan solid was kind of redundant, but whatever. I wasn't thinking at the time. I also added the sun, which is part of the tutorial that I followed. And there's this Maddie layer that if we go over here, it's just these black bars that create this kind of vaporwave effect with the sun. Then there's a floor. And then there's a grid on top of that, and I believe there's Gaussian blur. Then above that, there's just the normal grid with a gradient ramp on it. It's basically the same grid duplicated 3 times, and this is just to make it pop out more, and it's just with a different mode. And then there's this purple solid that I added, just to make things kind of like blend in with the background, and here as well, so it's smoother. Then I added this, which is a reflection of the city. Then I added the city, and the city is a 3D layer, and it's facing pretty much the same coordinates as the grid down here, as you can see, but it's very difficult to see. So let me zoom in the right spot so you can see the city here. Let me disable the one that's like not correctly reflected. As you can see, the city's right there. It's very hard to notice, but I just added it there and just left it there, to be honest. Kind of forgot about it. Then I added the actual city, and it kind of made things look very nice. I added saber. I mean, and I added a couple things. I duplicated the saver like 4 times to make things stand out with different modes and a mask layer in the first one, apparently. If we go down here, it's just this. I originally intended to add the mountains, but it did not look good, so I just got rid of them. And if we exit out of this, it looks like this. So if we go back up here, it's an adjustment layer. We got VR chromatic variation. We have more VR chromatic variation. It only affects certain areas. It's different for each one. As you can see, it affects the sun and right here, and I only limited it to a certain area because I didn't want to affect the background that much because the background already has VR chromatic variation. Then I added Lumetri color to add finishing touches to things, and I added shake, which is just transform. And if I double click on this, you can see there's a script right here, and it's very simple. I use scripts often and they're very helpful with automating things. I added more VR chromatic variation, and then I added VR digital glitch, and if I scrub through the timeline, you should see it, which is right here. So this layer is simple. Now there's another vaporwave layer that I created, and this one's more simple. It's almost the same as the other one, so let me just go ahead and open it. This isn't the same exact footage that I used, because the one that I used is simpler, and it did not have the stars in the background, which I believe is CC Starburst. So if I disable that, you can see it looks the same, but if I disable everything but the sky, which is the first background layer, it has a gradient ramp, and it has 2 colors, and it looks pretty nice. So I added the stars. If we go over here into the stars, you can see it's just CC Starburst. There's one that's like black and there's one that's lighter. Anyways, let me go close this. Let's go over here to the moon that I added. Yeah, nothing much, nothing special. There's an auto trace shaped, which I use Saber again, and a gradient ramp for this, and there's Saber again, just with a different preset to the first. And then I added Venetian blinds and a deep glow just to make things look a bit better. And here's the floor, which is something like this. The floor or this layer was added after the grid, so not everything that I'm showing by order is exactly the way that is created. It just wouldn't make sense. And I also added the mountains, and I added like a brighten contrast on here to smooth this out with the background down here. And then I added the grid, and it looks pretty nice so far. And another black solid to smooth things out, so it looks nice. Then I added auto traced mountains, which now looks like this, and it stands out a lot, but in a good way. It looks great. And then I added an adjustment layer with set amount of chromatic variation, not the default, which is like at max, usually when you just set it to preset or import it. And then I added another adjustment layer with Lumetri color and VR chromatic variation, and the Lumetri color, I think I just might have done a little bit of curves and possibly a bit of color correction. Yeah, right there, 20 contrast and curves. Messed a little bit with it, didn't do the typical S-curve. And over here with the VR chromatic variations, I just added a little bit to everything, I guess. So this is the background itself. Looks pretty nice, and I have 2 versions of these. I have one that's just clean and one that's just with the stars. So this is what it looks like with the stars. But yeah, it just plays back, the stars fade away, and it loops. So now that I've shown you the project files for these layers, because I remember showing this to a friend and he told me it looks like I just like downloaded these and just went ahead and just added the gun sync itself, which I don't like how it looks, but I showed him an early version which wasn't finished and did not have as many effects as it did, or as the final product has, because it was in a really early stage. But as you can see, there's this like audio amplitude, like 3 of them, and they're the same thing, except they have different values, because this is the beat drop, this is before the beat drop, which needs a lower value, this needs a bit of a higher value to be like less sensitive and crazy and all over the place. This needs a lower value, which is lower than this over here, because this is the build up for the beat drop, so it's kind of like in between these two, this one over here. I just simply added ease value parentheses and then just wrote whatever value I found fitting according to the graph that is shown. If I do this over here on screen, just click on the slider, just click on this little thing over here, graph editor, and it shows something like this, which is the whole song, and you can just hover over points and it tells you the value or the units, and it can give you an idea of what values to put whenever you're typing what I typed, which is this. But anyways, this is what I just added, and I think I added exposure. I also added exposure to this, and then to this one I think I added hue or something like that. Yeah, I added hue. I would have used the hue that comes with After Effects, but the thing is that I feel like this is quicker and easier instead of just, using that, which can be a bit time consuming. But anyways, it's just simple. Then I just kind of separated everything by layers over here and just added the backgrounds. So let's go on to the next project. So over here, as you can see, I already have effects on the start of this. I have camera lens blur to start it off, and I also have black and white, which just makes everything a bit pale, makes it look the way it does. And then I have optics compensation, which is for this part over here before it reverses and then shoots again over here. And over here, I added optics compensation, exposure, brightness and contrast, camera lens blur. And then over here, I just add a crazy mirror effect just to make everything look a bit trippy, get some exposure. Then I added some hue/saturation. Then over here, I just added a lot of mirror effects, chromatic aberration, that's from a third-party plugin, optics compensation, exposure, hue/saturation, and everything looks pretty nice, except for the hue, which was just for the start of this, just to make everything look a bit different. If I go over here, not much was added, except for unichromatic glow, VR digital glitch, chromatic aberrations, and offset. And I set offset to a script to wiggle a certain amount, not too much, and blend with the original, just to make things a bit interesting down here. If you zoom in, so you can see this is what it looks like. I also added time displacement, optics compensation, and deep glow to this to make things look a bit interesting and stand out and a bit trippy. Then if we go over here, I added optics compensation, deep glow. If I disable optics compensation, you can see things are a bit different. This is just to kind of make things look nice at the start. And I also added, and then over here at the start of the same clip, you might be able to guess which effects I added. Optics compensation, hue, and exposure. I mean, I just use these effects over and over, but they're just for transitions. And hue/saturation I added because I wanted to add some variety to the background and colors, so it's not the same color. It changes over time, this pinkish reddish color, which looks really nice. And over here, I don't do much. In fact, I don't do anything for this except correct a few errors when rendering in Vegas, because over here there are some rendering glitches and I had to duplicate frames so everything looks smoother. But other than that, we're good. Over here, I'm not sure if I added effects. I added deep glow, optics compensation, and VR chromatic aberration. Only at the start, right here as a transition. You can see on the edges, right here, the optics, not optics, but VR chromatic aberrations. And over here, I added deep glow and optics compensation as a transition. Go down here, it's the same thing. And over here, I added deep glow, optics compensation, and camera lens blur. And I used the camera lens blur at the end, which is right here. I also did an opacity animation, which I just lowered down the opacity to 0. And then a few times after this, I just go ahead and just change the opacity value and just make the fade quicker, because I noticed that I need to fade out everything quicker before it ends. So in this part of the project, I went ahead and I just added a couple transitions or effects to improve things and make the effects smoother and better than before, and also improve certain areas and make them more dynamic. So in the first area, as you can see, I've added curves because the background doesn't look like this. It makes this light a bit brighter, which I do not like, but it's a trade-off that comes with this, and I don't know. I guess I'll accept it. Also, if you notice, if you look closely, if I zoom in, you can see the stars are a bit pinkish, and it looks nice. Instead of it just being plain old white, which is kind of boring if you ask me. But over here we have a couple things. Change the color, hue/saturation, deep glow, and deep glow again with a different preset, hue/saturation with a different preset, and chromatic aberration from a third-party plugin, and VR chromatic aberrations. And yeah, I know I added a lot of stuff. I believe here's when I added the deep glow and chromatic aberrations from the third-party plugin. I did add change the color right here and hue/saturation over here as well. I added the third-party chromatic aberration in this part, and around here I added the VR chromatic aberrations, and over here I did add the third-party chromatic aberration, and as well as here. And then here I added deep glow with a different preset. I think that's about it. Now let's go on to the final version. So this is the final version. As you can see, it has my watermark. I still haven't figured out like a proper way to loop my watermark, so I'm gonna have to work on that. But I just made something really quick, which was painful to do. But if I double click on this, it's probably like the worst way to loop it. But the reason I had to do this instead of just right clicking on the watermark itself and going to interpret footage, click on main, and then like I don't know, loop it like 25 times. The reason I couldn't is because if I did it, it would look abrupt and it wouldn't look good. Like if I tried like making the loop look good, but it doesn't look good because it abruptly changes, and it's because I forgot to fade out the bottom part here. Otherwise, it would look smoother, but it's not that noticeable and it's not that bad. So just let's ignore the watermarks for now. Let me just go disable those and let's just focus on the gunsync itself and the lyrics as well, because I added lyrics here and they were painful to do, but I mean the effects look amazing in the end result. So over here to the gunsync, I did not add anything as I finished with the effects. Only thing I was missing were the lyrics. So if we go over here, we got the first lyrics, and if I double click on this, you can see all the lyrics over here. And to create this effect, what I added is wave warp. I added two different types of wave warps. One is in 90 degrees for the direction. The first one is in 180. And then I added a drop shadow to make things stand out from the background. And it was kind of pointless making the drop shadow black because it turned into white, but I guess that didn't matter because it probably would have turned into a different color if I made it white. So let's just go ahead and do that. See what happens. Yeah, it turned into like a reddish shade, but it don't matter. Let me just go and do that because that affects this layer over here. So it looks weird. So I'm glad I kept it black. But anyways, I added uni RGB separation and I added a script to it, which is, I believe, like times 120 or 100. Yeah, times 110. It needed to be a ridiculous amount because I tried doing like low values, like 20, and I did not notice a difference because of how this how long this takes to animate and how subtle the effect is. So I had to make it more abrupt and noticeable. So after that, I added color melt. It's just I was experimenting with effects to see how things look, and it looks pretty nice. Like if I disable these two and just enable this, it looks really nice. It adds this like kind of ghostly aura or something like that. And then I added a hand-drawn filter or effect, whatever this is called. And it looks pretty nice. It makes everything pop out and it looks great. Over here, I added another set of, a different preset for different lyrics, which is a female voice saying, "You don't love me." And I just decided to make it like pinkish to make it fit, like a light pink. And then I added same effects as before. And it looks, and over the beat drop around here, I decided to add deep glow to make things stand out more because it's the beat drop and I wanted to make things different and add variety to it. But I did add it twice in some areas. But if we go further down the timeline over here, you can see that I blurred out. That's when you can like barely hear the lyric and it's hard to hear. It was fitting to make this blurry and I decided to add camera lens blur twice on this with different values and different presets. So it creates this unique effect. And I did the same thing here too, because this originally had camera lens blur. If I go back here, I think it's because I added camera lens blur because this was supposed to be in like the back. So over here, I added again just to make it more blurry. But this time I make it less blurry as the lyric gets louder and you're able to hear it. And then I just make it different colors according to the background. So if we go back over here to the timeline, you can see it's kind of like this reddish hue, most of it except for this because it's a different color. And it was fitting to change the color. So if we go over here, where it's like kind of like greenish, I make this green, but the effect is very hard to notice because of the color, and it kind of it makes all the effects that I added kind of pointless, but it don't matter. I just keep on going with that. And now we're just at the end, and I just add the last lyrics for this part, then I just go ahead and just fade out everything. I think I made the fade out shorter this time as well, and it creates this nice little fade out. And I also add a camera lens blur, which I already told you from last project. But this is it. Sorry if this took too long. I think I'm going to make a separate video. I was planning to add this to the time-lapse video, but since this is too long, and it took 50 minutes of recording just to break this down, I don't think I'll be adding this to the time lapse, but thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Here's the original video in the description and right now on screen. See you until next video.